What's up? What's going on? Hide and Read, here to resurrect an old series that I used to do. It's Read of the Month, where we go over the best book that we read in the previous month. That month was May 2026. The author is Willa Cather, and the particular book is Death Comes for the Archbishop. This is an excellent read. I would be surprised if I read something better this year. Could always hope for it, but I'd be perfectly satisfied if this is as good as this year gets. Got some basic notes here about the author, and we'll go over the plot summary just a little bit. So Willa Cather was born in 1873 in Virginia. At 9 years old, her family moved from Virginia to Nebraska to escape a tuberculosis outbreak. Her family tried their hand at homesteading, but after a few years decided to get kind of more normative, straight-laced jobs. A lot of her books are about the homesteading experience in the Great Plains. Death Comes for the Archbishop is decidedly a lot more Western. At the same time, it doesn't follow the typical Western genre. It's definitely a literary novel. At 33 years old, in 1906, she took a job as an editor for McClure's magazine in New York City, and she started spending her summers in a cabin in Grand Old Manin Island, which is a little bit north of the most northern town in the United States of America, and that's in Lubec, Maine. Her cabin up there didn't have plumbing or electricity, so it was really an escape from the city. If you've read anything about people living in New York City during the time period, it was very, very hot without air conditioning. I'm sure she was glad to make an escape up into Canada for the summers. She lived with her domestic partner for 39 years, Edith Lewis. There's a lot of kind of talk and debate about Willa Cather's sexuality and all this kind of stuff. It's safe to say that she didn't really confine herself to traditional gender roles for women, and she definitely related more to women. There's over 500 letters that surviving from her, just like back and forth, but she did request when she was writing letters to people that they destroyed the letters. But in over 500 letters, there's really no mention of her sexuality at all. Edith Lewis was like the inheritor of her will. They're buried next to each other. So they definitely had a relationship, but the extent of that is unknown. She's one of 6 children, and in high school, she would sign her name as William. She was actually born Willella, but eventually just shortened it to Willa. All right, on to the book. Death Comes for the Archbishop was written in 1927. It follows the lives of 2 Catholic missionaries, Jean-Baptiste Lamy and Joseph Projectus Macbeuf, which are respectively in the story Archbishop Latour and Father Vaillant. In history, Macbeuf ends up becoming the Bishop of Denver. The territory of New Mexico was founded in 1850, so we can assume that's when the story's taking place. And New Mexico didn't become a state until 1912. And it went from, this is after the Mexican-American War, it changes from New Spain, because it was under the control, it was like a Spanish colony, and then becomes New Mexico. The story begins with a council of bishops and cardinals trying to decide the fate for the Catholic diocese in this newfound territory, New Mexico. They decide on sending these two French missionaries who are currently residing in Ohio out to New Mexico, in the capital of Santa Fe, in order to set up this new diocese. And it's going to be a lot different than how the Spanish did things. That's kind of a common theme in the novel, is how the difference between the Spanish and the French. And even though they're in the same religion, the Spanish were a lot more heavy-handed. They forced the natives into Catholicism, and the French are a lot more liberal. They allow different kinds of cultural practices, and the Spanish were just a lot more severe. Like when the missionaries show up, there is a very heavy Catholic population, especially compared to like the rest of the United States of America. There's just like different practices that aren't exactly what we would consider Catholic today, like flagellation, just like different things like that were influences from Spain. Reading the book, it's certainly in the Western genre. It's highly regarded as one of the best Westerns, but there's no like cowboy shoot 'em up kind of action, but there are common characters that you would see in Westerns. The most popular example is probably Kit Carson. He makes lots of appearances in the novel, and just like many Westerns, you'll read about Kit Carson. It also kind of borders the Gothic genre, because there's lots of different kind of like horror elements, which is certainly not the theme of the book, but it's like horror on the borders of religion, and superstition mixed together. There's one notable tale about the natives. There's like a rumor going around that there's this snake cult, and that the natives sacrifice children to this kind of like deified snake that's hidden in a cave, and no one will really talk about it. There's also just like big expansive sceneries with the kind of like the mesas being described as Gothic cathedrals. There are Gothic cathedrals that they encounter. There's a lot of kind of just like remnants of the Spanish culture that are left to ruin. There's the original native populations, which are not like what we consider to be Native Americans, that are like people don't really know who they were, but we know that what we consider Native Americans at some point replaced them in their culture. And then there's also just kind of the theme of religiosity, superstition, and also like this new like boundary of science all meeting together, which you often find in Gothics. The writing is also very, it's nothing like Victorian, but it's very identifiable as literature. There's lots of romance, but more in the sense of like the landscape, the relationships and friendships between different characters, and also, there's always going to be some kind of drama. That's why we're reading novels. The book does a really good job of explaining the different native populations and how they're interacting with each other and differing between them, and also how the Spanish influenced a lot of it. So the two main characters, Archbishop Latour and Father Vaillant, have a very kind of like, you see this a lot in Westerns, like buddy relationship, where they depend on each other, but they're very distinct archetypes from each other, and they like complement the two of them. They grew up together and went to the same seminary and came to America together. So they have like this lifelong friendship until both of them pass away. and you kind of get to see these two celibate men interacting with each other, and they have like they have the same goal basically, but they go about it in very different means. The Archbishop, that's Father Latour, is very graceful. He cuts like a very distinguished figure, whereas Father Vaillant is more like a valiant knight. He's more brutish. He's willing to get the job done, and the two of them working together accomplish a lot. They end up setting up a cathedral that's a historical cathedral. You can go and visit. I hope to visit one day in Santa Fe. It was great. I loved it. The descriptions of the landscapes, the descriptions of the native cultures. The drama was pretty good too. And yeah, Willa Cather. Definitely going to be checking out the rest of her books. I suggest you do the same. Death for the Archbishop was the first one I read, and I can't imagine you would do wrong by starting with this one too. So that's my pick of the month. Death Comes for the Archbishop, Willa Cather. And until next time, find somewhere to hide, find something to read. Peace.